And I said, at the end of the day is we are in the lead generation business.
Mm.
You could be the best realtor in the world. You can know the contract inside out. You could give the best service. But if you have nobody to provide that to, it's worth nothing. And I said, if you can learn this skill set in this business, it's going to translate to anything else you end up doing in life.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, Yona Weiss. Grateful to be here today with another awesome guest. We got SanFilippo in the house. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Good, Yona. I appreciate you having me. I was excited that you asked me to have on. I've been following your podcast for a while, so it's great to finally do it and connect.
Absolutely. And I love having people who are, local business owners, people who are obviously in the real estate business. That's the main common denominator of pretty much everyone who's been a guest on this show. And you've been in the business for quite a while and have really succeeded. And I'd love to break it down and give our listeners some idea from, both the side of being a real estate broker, right? A realtor and running a company, as well, being an entrepreneur with that regard, as well as figuring out the investment side of things too, which don't always go hand in hand. And so I'm really curious to kind of hear your backstory, how you got into real estate, how it all got started.
Thanks. So to go back, it was about 2005 I got into real estate, and I'd gone to college out in Pennsylvania. I went to Muhlenberg College, and then I went to Lehigh University. I got a master's degree, and I got, quote unquote, my dream job. And I moved down to Philadelphia. I started that dream job, and with about 2 weeks into it, I knew I made a big mistake. And I had family that was in real estate, and I remember I called my parents. It's one of those sliding glass door moments in my life where things changed. I called my parents and said, Mom, Dad, I'm pretty miserable. I don't really want to do this. Like, I want to move home and get into real estate. And this is before there was all the shows and you show 3 houses and you sell one. Real estate wasn't as cool back then. And I was about 25 years old. And I said, so Mom, Dad, I'm coming home. And on the other end of the phone, I heard nothing but silence. My parents are like, what do you mean you're moving home? And I grew up in Hillsborough, New Jersey. And I said, listen, I really want to get into real estate. I said, I really want to dive in and I want to take it serious. So I want to move home. Just give me a year. Let me see if I could figure this out. And if I can't figure it out, I'm going to go back and get a real job because, real estate is not a real job.
Right.
I was joking around. So I moved home. I was dead broke. I didn't have any friends that were buying or selling houses. So I always remember I got a Discover credit card with 0% credit interest for 12 months. And I said, listen, I'm going to live off this credit card for 12 months. I can't pay it back. I'm going to go out and get a real job. So if anyone's a Dave Ramsey follower, it's probably the worst thing you can do. They would tell you not to do. So I figured I'd bet on myself. And I went to work every day as an agent and I treated it as a 9-to-5 job. And I worked and I started hitting the phones and I really got big into the distressed property space because now this is about 2007. REOs were starting to come back. Short sales were starting to come back. So what I did was I really built a business as an agent in all distressed properties. So I was doing REOs, short sales. I was literally working with banks and then I'd be at dinner and I would see the bank, run on the bank at night and the bank was closing. And I go, well, I would lose that account. And I had really no idea of how to get these bank REO properties and be their listing agent. But I said, if I could get into a bank that gives me 10 to 30 listings a month, it's probably better, in a year, it's probably better than at being 25, sitting in people's houses trying to get listings.
Right.
So I started going to all the different sheriff sales. And this is before all the information was online.
Mm-hmm.
We'd track the sales. Okay, this goes back to Countrywide Bank. I would literally go on Countrywide's website and get their 1-800 number and I would cold call the bank. And I would get around the gatekeeper and I would get to the person who was handling the distribution of the REO, the asset manager. And I would sell myself on the services and I got in with like 30 different banks.
Wow.
So I started doing a ton of REOs. I really enjoyed it because it was kind of 9-to-5 bank hours. And then in 2011, the banks kind of froze doing REOs because of this whole robo signing, the big 5 banks.
Right.
So luckily, I still worked with a lot of regional banks. I was busy. And then I started doing a lot of short sales because I had a lot of time on my hands. And I figured I know the reverse side of this. Let me start doing some short sales and some marketing, generating leads. And we ended up doing a ton of short sales as well. So we really kind of focused on our niche of being distressed.
Yeah.
And
Sounds like
I
it.
stress to realtors all the time, if you specialize in everything, you specialize in nothing.
Right. You got to pick
So
one lane. For just curious, for our listeners who may not be familiar, because we got all kinds of listeners that tune into the show, someone who may not be familiar with what exactly is a short sale, if you can just break that down quickly, because I think a lot of the context, obviously, we understand it's distressed. We understand there's something happening quickly, but what is that all about?
right. So the REO end is when the bank would take back a property and foreclose on it, go through
Yeah.
sheriff sale, they would choose an agent to list it. The short sale process was when a seller was behind on their mortgage and they're a distressed situation and they needed to sell the property. And what we would do is go negotiate on their behalf with the bank to take less than what's owed on the mortgage, hence a short sale, and be able to get to closing. So we handled that for a lot of people in distressed situations and we learned how to really market towards people in short sale situations. So I did that for about 7 years. And then I ended up buying a real estate brokerage in East Brunswick, New Jersey. That was a Remax franchise. We started off with about 8 agents. And then since 2013, we've grown that into about 4 locations, 300 agents. And last year, we were just ranked number 9 in RIS Media for the state of New Jersey for units and volume out of all real estate companies in the state.
That's pretty cool.
So, yeah, I'm really passionate about that. I really just enjoy building and scaling. I remember the first time I got a listing, I said, okay, now how do I get 10 of these? And that kind of translated into my real estate investing world. I was nervous to take that leap, as most agents and people are, from selling real estate to buying real estate.
Hmm.
We started probably in about 2012 and 13. And when I look back, my biggest regret was not buying more buy and holds then, because the market was really at the bottom.
Yeah.
We started off doing fix and flips, did a little bit of that to help build revenue. Didn't think I wanted to ever really be a landlord. And that was me just being, I look back and say, well, I was just young and foolish, because I see properties that we flipped that have now sold. I'm like, well, if I kept it, the
Yeah.
upside would have been huge. So, but around 2014, I made a decision. And I remember my wife told me she was pregnant with our daughter. We have 2 kids. And I said, well, the only way I'm going to save for their college or build any type of wealth is through buying real estate. Because anytime I invest in a stock or I put anything in anywhere else, it goes down. But real estate, I kind of understand. So I said, if I could buy an investment property, this will be my
Hmm.
daughter's college fund, whatever else. So the day we found out, I actually got an offer accepted and I started buying. I really started in the space of condos.
Yeah.
And I was buying a lot off of like Zone.com, Hubzu, a lot of the auction websites back in 15, 16, taking on tenancy because I was getting good deals. And then over time, we shifted from buying the condos and we started upgrading to multifamily, bigger multifamily, to
Hmm.
commercial properties. So when people are asking me about investing, I say, listen, start an asset class you're comfortable with and then just start upgrading, because if
Hmm.
you're not comfortable, you're never going to pull the trigger.
Right.
The first one is always the hardest one.
So you started out, I mean, still your brokerage is residential properties, correct? And you're still dealing with
Mostly.
mostly resident. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be some commercial properties mixed in there. The commercial real estate agents will have a field day with that,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
they don't like residential agents going into their space. But no, what I'm curious about is because that is a big mindset, and you kind of touched on it just now. You got to start somewhere. You have to start with what you're comfortable with. You are always in and around that real estate, the residential side of things, from single families, from condos, and then even multifamily. But moving it up, right? You bought all kinds of different properties over the years. And obviously that sounds like it's starting somewhere. But what I'm really curious about, and the question I have is, how did you make that jump, that mindset shift where it's like from being just the realtor, just being the broker, which is more transactional, it's a sales job. It's something very different. I mean, obviously you deal with your own agents on a day-to-day basis, then going to more an entrepreneur where here, I'm buying a property, I'm an investor, I'm buying a business. It's seeing the other side of the coin, so to speak.
And there's nothing wrong with fix and flipping, but I was doing a lot of fix and flips and I was just felt like I had another job, very transactional.
Yeah.
And then I had the same issue around tax time about how can we lower our tax rate and burden and everything. So I guess like my mindset with everything else is I've been lucky enough to scale a bunch of different things, a bunch of different businesses. So I think what really changed my mindset was when I really learned the velocity of money with real estate investing. And I learned how to leverage money and sort of that velocity to be able to scale a real estate investment portfolio. Once I kind of got that aha moment,
Mm,
I was hooked. And I'm like, how many can we do? How can we build this up? And really what I started learning too is about depreciation. And then when I started learning about the cost, I was like, this is solving multiple issues for me that I'm able to lower my tax burden,
mhm.
take the money I'm saving from my taxes to reinvest into other properties and keep it going. And then we just got more and more comfortable in different asset classes. And we really just started scaling. So I made that shift probably around like 2018 or the pandemic of like, okay, how do I scale these properties? And how do I build myself a portfolio where I know I owe and I know things are going to go up and down, but if I have enough assets, I tell some investors, I feel like sometimes the danger spot is when you buy one investment property or two investment properties, because if you have a mortgage on it and the tenant's not paying rent, then it gets really stressful.
Yeah,
But having over 50, 60, whatever, 80, whatever we're at, is if I have a tenant that's not paying rent, I don't even notice it because it's the economies of scale.
right. Makes sense.
Yeah. So for me, I say, sometimes I always try to get out what I call like those like Death Valley areas of business where you don't have enough where you can hire. So I was just like, let me really build this to be a business.
Hmm.
And then we parlayed that into a property management company where we manage a lot for third party investors because we were already managing our own portfolio and I had already done so much
Makes
property
sense.
as an REO agent. So we built and we have a full property management team that runs pretty much without me. We have a leasing agent, property managers, and managing properties in New Jersey is not as easy as other parts of the country. So I said, let's just do it ourselves. There's not that many, I would say, our size property management companies doing residential and small commercial like we are
Mm.
in the state. So we're kind of focusing on doing that for other investors as well.
That's pretty cool. And do you, I mean, would you say what's the balance of the clientele that your Remax company gets in terms of investors versus people looking to buy their own homes?
Right. So I would say we're probably about 20% in our Remax on investors and 80% regular residential. Our property management company is an entirely different company.
Mhm. Okay.
And there we get some referrals from the Remax, but we do our own lead gen. We generate everything for that. And we do have a lot of I call them accidental landlords, the landlord that doesn't want to give up their
Sure.
3% rate. But we do deal with a lot of investors and their portfolios as well.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. People moving out of state, or they just have upscaling to a bigger place or whatever, right? I see that all the time also, right? People accidental landlords where they have a property they don't want to sell and they move out and just keep it as a rental. And many people, that's how they get into it. And like, wait a second, I'm collecting rent and now I'm making money. Let's buy another one or let's do two more, and that's pretty cool how you can kind of start that way. Do you have any more of your agents that are like interested in investing, or do you encourage them at all to like buy real estate as well?
So we're really passionate, my partner and I, about we want to see other realtors invest in real estate. I always say I see too many agents chasing shiny objects
Yep.
and too many agents selling a deal to somebody where it's like, hey, you could have bought that. I mean, obviously you have to disclose it and you have to do everything above board, but
Right.
there's opportunities for you as an agent and as realtors, you don't have a 401k, you don't have a pension. It's on you to create this. And we live and breathe real estate every day. But when you're able to make that leap from agent to investor, that's when your life really changes, in my opinion.
For sure.
Um,
I mean, like you
because
said before about depreciation, just alone, because they're already the real estate professional status being a realtor, they can already start to scale by having more money to invest just simply because they're, not paying less taxes.
yeah, I tell our agents all the time, you have a leg up on most people because it's easy for you to prove how you're a real estate professional more than some other investors who also have W-2s. And I was like, and I would keep telling them like over the next few years, this is such an advantage, an opportunity for you to help build wealth and set yourself up for retirement. Like, I don't want to see you miss this window.
For sure. For sure. What advice would you give to, and do you give? Because besides for, investing and building up their own wealth through that, but just as a broker, someone starting out, you started out basically bootstrapping it. Like you said, you had the advantage of, living with your parents. You probably didn't have a lot of overhead expenses at that time, but putting everything on your credit card for 12 months, you obviously were successful within those first 12 months. But now looking back, like, what do you tell new agents starting out, people coming in like young people or whatever, like, hey, I want to get into real estate. I want to become an agent. How do I become successful in the first 12 months?
Well, I tell them the first thing you got to do is ignore everything you've ever seen on any of the shows on TV. I was like, because if you think any of that is like this, you're 100% wrong. And I said, there's one thing that you have to do over the next 12 months is you be able to have grit. You're gonna have to sacrifice. You're gonna miss a party. You're gonna miss going out with your friends or something. You're gonna make sacrifices. When you start any business, people talk about balance and all this. Like, yes, you need to have balance, but in the beginning, like, you need to work. And there's nothing that's going to substitute work. You're going to have to step outside your comfort zone. And I said, at the end of the day, is we are in the lead generation business.
Mm,
You could be the best realtor in the world. You can know the contract inside out. You could give the best service. But if you have nobody to provide that to, it's
mhm.
worth nothing. And I said, if you can learn this skill set in this business, it's going to translate to anything else you end up doing in life. So I stressed on lead generation, really how to get in front of your sphere, how to generate leads. I'm very big into data. Who's really looking to buy and sell? Let's target that on marketing.
Mm.
Sometimes, and we have to see is if you don't have money to put towards a marketing budget, then you're going to have to hit the streets. So that's what I
Marketing
really.
is huge. Yeah, lead generation, marketing is huge. Notoriously, right? Residential real estate agents. I mean, from my just experience, seem like using all of like the old school, right? Almost like, I don't want to say archaic, but like old school methods of marketing. You talk about billboards or bench ads or like on buses and all this kind of stuff. What I'm curious is, are you guys still doing that kind of stuff, or what are you doing that is literally, 21st century, that is new age, social media or whatever it is? I'm kind of curious to see how some of your agents are taking new
I'm gonna
ways.
say a lot of the top agents we have is they might just have a lot of market share in a town, kind of be the go-to agent,
Hmm.
deep community, staying in front of their past clients, referrals, working networks. I mean, what I'm doing is what I'm really stressing to agents right now is what is the biggest issue realtors are having is there's no inventory. So we have
Yeah.
to go out and create the inventory. And how do we do that? We look at the data. Who's most likely to sell right now? It's people who have been in their house for 20 plus years, have a lot of equity in their house. They might be moving out of state, downsizing, moving to a 55 plus, not worried about 7% interest rates because they're paying cash out of the equity from their house.
Hmm.
So we know that's what I call sort of our avatar client and the client we want to be in front of. All right, there's data of who these potential home sellers are. So let's get in front of these home sellers. How can we get in front of them? We can mail to them.
Hmm.
We can get their contact information. If they're not on the do not call list, we can call, we can door knock them. We can take those lists and put them in social media, create some custom audiences, build some. So we really stress where I agree with you. A lot of the old tactics of like, oh, let's just mail this neighborhood. Well, if nobody's moving in this neighborhood, why are we mailing to them? Right. Or like, what does the data look like? Like, start with the end, reverse engineer it,
Hmm.
and work your way backwards. So, absentee owners right now, that's another big one. Or the accidental landlord whose tenant lived there for a year, moved out, and they need $20,000 of repairs. And they're saying, well, I don't want to repair it. I might as well just sell it. I have 300,000 in equity. Those are real prime sellers right now. So that's sort of what I stress is like, hey, how do we get in front of that? How do we get some good call to actions? How do we market? How do we build this? So we do a lot of training, like here's called sales funnel. How do we get them in a sales funnel? How do we bring it down? All the practices of marketing are the same, leveraging social media, seminars, leading with education. That's what we're really stressing to our agents: buyer seminars, seller seminars, things of those nature. We're always really preaching to our agents right now to generate new clients.
Fascinating. And you're primarily in New Jersey, correct? I mean, are you out of state at all, or is it? primarily focused in the state of New Jersey?
We're only in New Jersey.
Only in New Jersey. And what markets are you covering? Because I'm kind of curious. There are a lot of, different markets around the state.
So we have 4 offices. We have offices in Union County down to Hamilton and Mercer County. So that kind of area, the true, I guess we want to say Central Jersey, the greater
Right.
Central Jersey is kind of our bread and butter market.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of market share in Middlesex County.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and typically those areas, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, are your middle America, really like just a lot of suburban areas. There's not a lot of industry in a lot of these places. You're dealing with residential neighborhoods almost entirely, right?
100%. We're dealing with the residential real estate. I mean, just your typical neighborhoods, suburban areas, want to commute to New York. We're in areas where we have a pretty good average sale price and we have a lot of units. Typically, historically, I mean, there's not a lot of units out there right now in general, but historically, it's like a lot of units and a lot of turnover.
Absolutely. I'd love to transition a little bit to understand from the investor side, right? From the investment aspect, right? Buying commercial real estate, doing that. It's a whole business in of itself. What types of properties do you look at and how do you figure? Is it just things that come along your way, or are you going out of your way to really search specific markets or specific areas?
So it's a great question. So we use data, just like we talked about on the real estate
Right?
side. We use data to market to sellers off market. We're usually there to solve a problem and
Mm-hmm.
a solution for somebody. So we really are starting to target more commercial, bigger multifamily properties. We'll still do the smaller 2 families, 3 families. I think I was talking about this with my partner the other day. I said I was trying to go after some really big deals last year, and none of them came to fruition. And as I'm trying to hit those triples and home runs, I missed a lot of really good singles and doubles.
Yeah.
I was like, this year I got to get back to like focusing on those singles and doubles, and those triples and home runs are going to come. So I'm pretty specific on what I buy. I have to be able to add value.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to force appreciation, and I want a cash flow. I want to do both. So I know some people are like, hey, I'm all cash flow, or I want to buy in areas I appreciate. I like a good mixture of both. So those are sort of my 2 criterias, because I also don't want to be stuck if I'm renovating, and if I decide to sell for some reason, I want to be able to have that choice. So I have different kind of exit strategies.
Right.
Those are what we really focus on. And on the 2 and 3 families, I kind of really focus on, can I buy this, force the appreciation, refinance, and be little to no money into the deal by this time I'm said and done. So I could just rinse and repeat those all day long and then save more capital on some of those bigger projects that we might take, like the commercial properties and things like that. And what I've learned with the commercial is a lot of that is just networking. A lot of that is just contacts, letting people know what you're looking for. We bought a commercial deal in a redevelopment zone, and we got it through seller financing at really favorable terms because it was somebody that inherited the property. And I used to hear that stuff on podcasts or in
Yeah.
books, and I'm like, that doesn't really happen. Like, that doesn't happen. And it in the commercial world, it happens more than people think. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in commercial because there's a lot of properties that are mismanaged, and the
Mm-hmm.
banks are getting a lot tighter on those landlords when they have to refi and when the payment balloons, where I think there is a lot of opportunity to come in there to add value, reset some of those bigger commercial properties and do okay with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so powerful, the power of the network and just putting yourself out there, making sure people know what you're doing. Because as soon as they do, like, you'll become a person they want to refer business to, or they may have a property and they'll sell it to you. And getting that seller financing, that's awesome. And that really makes, usually in many cases, makes the deal much sweeter because you can usually get a lot more out of it.
And I say, even with investing, there's no difference. I've worked with a lot of wholesalers and I've worked with a lot of different types of sellers. And I said, your reputation's everything. There's so many deals I've gotten where I wasn't the first buyer, but I was the second or third buyer. And they call me and say, hey, can you close in a week? Like, I know you're going to close.
Mm-hmm.
And when you build up a reputation of someone who says, hey, I'm going to close, I never looked at anyone else's fees, that really helped create a funnel of deals brought to me as well.
For sure. Now, I want to go back to something you talked about earlier about having, building this team, this Remax team up to over 300 agents. Something that I've noticed, and maybe you can shed some light on this, is that real estate agents tend to be a profession that there's a lot of turnover, right? You have people coming in and they get big eyes and they figure they can make huge commissions and everything like that. And then it doesn't really pan out the way they want it to. I mean, what is you talk about data a lot. I'm sure you're tracking this, knowing like how many agents, what's the actual turnover rate? How long are people staying in the game? I'm just curious to hear what your feedback is on that.
So most agents don't make it over 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And even out of the ones that do, there was a stat that NAR put out, National Association of Realtors. It was something like 78% of agents didn't do one transaction in the last year.
Wow. Yeah, you can't,
So
when you're living off commission, you can't live, basically.
yeah, and I think a lot of it was, and especially during COVID. So COVID, the one restriction used to be, hey, to get your real estate license, you had to go to class
Mm,
and get your license. But during COVID, they moved it to Zoom. So we saw the numbers go up a lot because people were working from home and they were kind of calling it like the gig economy. Hey, I'll get my real estate license. I always laugh. You see the TV shows. I don't know what to do in life. I'm going to go get my real estate license. And I take being a realtor really serious because you're dealing with most people, their primary house is their biggest asset.
mm-hmm.
It is their retirement. It is a lot of their net worth. So I take it very serious. And our brokerage is comprised mostly of truly experienced agents who have been in the business, who are doing this full time. We're not looking at this and have the same type of mentality. Like we want to provide A+ service because we are talking about the way a lot of your retirement's built into, and a lot of the way
Mm-hmm.
you're going to build wealth is through your primary house.
Right. Interesting.
So there's huge turnover in the industry. Luckily, our firm, we really focus on bringing in really professional agents. And I think that's why we ended up as top 10 in the state, only
Right.
having 300 agents when some of our competitors have thousands, but they have a lot of those agents that never do, maybe do one deal a year, if
Right.
that.
Right. So it sounds like you don't really have a lot of turnover when it comes to the people coming on board with your team.
Luckily, we have a pretty low turn rate.
I mean, does it have to do with the fact that you're, kind of vetting agents before they come on board? Like, hey, we're not looking for someone who's kind of brand new. We're looking for someone who's more seasoned, who has more experience.
Definitely part of our vetting process. And then once they kind of get in our organization, I think we offer a lot of tools.
Mm,
And I think we talk a lot about not just how to sell real estate, but how to buy an investment property. What is the advantage of I know you've came in and done a presentation for our organization about cost segment, like how
right.
you should know that and if you're not going to invest, you should at least know this for your clients who might be real estate professionals. Really just being educated and being a pro.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work with an amateur. People want to work with professionals. So how do we set ourselves apart? How do we do that in our marketing? And
Hmm.
how do we be the best of the best? I mean, that's what we want to focus on.
That's fascinating. Well, it's amazing to hear that there's a lot working for you. It sounds like a lot working for your teams, and congratulations on being recognized for that and having such, I'm sure that it's just going to go up from here because you keep building, the teams keep building on themselves, each office. And it sounds like the sky's the limit.
Thank you.
I mean, Jersey's the limit really, but
Yeah, that's big enough for me.
it's a big state. It's a small state, but it's big enough for everyone. Well, Carl, I want to transition now what we call the final four. So these are four questions I like to ask all my guests. First one for you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
I remember it like it was yesterday. I was home from college and it was the winter. And my friend said, hey, listen, I've been working for this moving company, moving commercial furniture. Why don't you come in? And I wrestled and stuff in high school. And so I was like, okay, yeah, no problem. I went in one day. It was freezing cold. We were moving all these desks and stuff out of an office complex. And I just remember leaving there going, there's no way I could go back. This is the absolute. I thought Blockbuster was the worst job I had when I was in high school. That looks like paradise compared to this job. So that was 100% the worst job I ever had. And don't miss it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's usually those kind of one-off jobs we get on vacation from college or something like that that tend to be the worst. But yeah, I definitely hear that. Second question is going to be, what is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
So I think it's easy. It's probably a lot of people's answer, but my parents made me to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh,
And
okay.
that really changed my mindset. And when my wife and I were about to get married, I said, before we get married, just read this book because I want to give you an insight of how I think. And she was like, I get it. I totally get it. So I actually listen to that all the time driving
Wow.
around, the audiobook, but just, the assets, the liabilities. And, it's funny as I've gotten older and maybe a little bit of a nicer car, I said, none of this was purchased before I started buying all these rental properties. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put it backwards. So really focus on building the assets, building that column. I'm an investor in some things. So I've moved into that quadrant as well. I'm going to have a lot of people that run other businesses. But that book and a lot of Richard Kiyosaki's books really changed my mindsets.
It's fascinating that you said your parents made you read the book because that's a blessing in of itself. Were they investors as well? Do they have experience in real estate beforehand?
So my mom did a little bit of commercial real estate, but nothing at that high of a level. And my dad was a teacher. And real quick, I'll share the story. I remember I was in college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I called my dad. I said, Dad, I think I'm just going to be an education major and do like what you did and your uncle and my uncle. And my dad says, that's a really great idea. But if you do that, I'm going to pull you out of college. And I was like, well, Dad, that's not exactly the answer I was looking for. He said, listen, it's not what it used to be in the profession. And he goes, you can always go back and do it. He goes, take a shot. That's something else. Just take a shot because I'm fully there to support you.
Hmm.
So my parents, even though we didn't come from a big real estate family or a wealthy family, they were always big on like, hey, take a shot, get into real estate, learn as much as you can, and just go out there and do it. So I owe them a lot of credit for those type of the ways that they instilled those things in my brain.
That's awesome. Yeah, and like I said, very uncommon. You have parents, recommending to their kids 25, 30 years ago, right? I don't want to age you too much, but 20 years ago, right? To read that book. That's crazy. But that's awesome. And it is something that it has been mentioned quite a few times on the show, but for very good reason, because it is a paradigm shifting type of book. Third question is, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn? And this could be anything.
Does it include my golf game? Because
Anything.
that
Yeah,
could always get a lot
anything
better now.
whatsoever.
I think one thing, one skill, I mean, that's a really good question, but one skill that I want to be able to learn a little bit more, and I've been doing it more and more, is patience.
Mm, wow.
Because I think sometimes my lack of patience could be a down. I'm like, well, why can't we do it now? Like, let's just do it now. Like, let's just do this. Like, let's go, go, go. And as I've gotten a little bit older and wiser, I like to say in business is sometimes a patience could be a real virtue in business.
Yeah.
If something sounds good, I'm probably the easiest person to sell. I'm like, well, this sounds great. I'm in. Let's do it. All right, how much? No problem. Where if I had a little bit more patience and kind of waited it out, I might have made a better decision.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Well, I don't have any recommendations off the top of my head of how to learn that, but having teenagers helps. That's how you get all these white hairs in my beard over here. I have 4 teenagers right now. Yeah, that definitely teaches you patience. Fourth and final question, Carl. What does success mean to you?
Another great question. Success means to me is just the freedom to be able to surround myself with who I want to surround myself with, be able to make the decisions and choices of what I want to do, when I want to do it. If I want to get up tomorrow and hop on a plane and go to Europe and walk away from the businesses, like I know I'm going to come back and the businesses are going to run without me and we're probably going to grow and just not stay stagnant. So to me is really just that freedom to be able to surround myself with who I want to surround myself with and experience the things I want to experience with the people I want to experience it with. And to me, that's the total freedom.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, Carl. It's really been an insightful conversation, and I learned a lot. And love for you to give our listeners a way that they can find you or reach out to you if they want.
So on Instagram, it's my name, Carlos SanFilippo. Facebook, same thing, Carlos SanFilippo. Definitely connect with me. I just want to say I appreciate all the education, everything you've put out. Well, I've learned a lot about cost segregations before I ever spoke to you. And I know we've done a bunch of projects together, and I know we're going to have more projects coming up. So I just want to say thank you because you do such a great job getting the information out in such an easy, consumable way. A lot of people like to make things seem difficult. You really break it down to how it's easy. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure. Keep it simple. That's what you got to do.
I love it.
Well, thank you again for joining me on the show. And to our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in once again all the way to the end. And remember, until next time, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.